Man, just when you think you know everything about Transformers, just when you think you've heard it all, you've seen it all, you know the history, stuff comes bubbling to the surface from the past. Now, we are one day away from the Transformers War for Cybertron Earthrise Netflix TV series being public, but we're not moving forward today. We are looking to the past, and we are learning the secret origins of that of Beast Wars that we did not know about all these years ago. This is some incredible stuff because it really gives better insight to how the breakdown of certain characters were decided, and even the decision to go in the Beast direction. And as crazy as this sounds, McDonald's might have been more important than we think to why we have Beast Wars today. And I'm going to break this all down. So in 1995, we had BotCon, and Hasbro was not able to attend because they were doing their whole different acquisition with Kenner and the future of what was going on with that company. So because it was so complicated, they were not able to come to BotCon. There was stuff going on with Hasbro, with Kenner and stuff, and we all know where that was going to go in the future. At that same time, in March of 1995, Hasbro was knee-deep in their Generation 2 line of Transformers. It was Cyberjets, it was all kinds of little things here and there, and especially the GoBots. And they were submitting a proposal along with MB Sales. MB Sales, for people who aren't familiar with them, McDonald's has a marketing department that they have separate from everything else that handles all their promotional stuff that they do every year. People are probably more familiar with MB Sales from the recent documentary about the Monopoly scam that McDonald's had with their Monopoly, I guess, chit pieces and stuff like that. That was all related with MB Sales. But MB Sales was also the people that would work with all the different companies when they would do all their different toy promotions. So here's MB Sales, their March 7th, 1995 proposals, discussion with Hasbro on literally discussing what is going to be their first ever public Transformer promotion. And they're planning it a year in advance. This is the first ever presentation, March 7th, 1995, to be produced and ready for next year in April of 1996. So it's very interesting to have all of these documentations and reports with dates and stuff. But it gets even deeper into that because at the time it was G2. G2 was the flavor, Optimus Prime, Megatron, this and that. And it was still Hasbro at the reign of things, at least at that moment. They were going through that little merger with Kenner, so a lot of the lingo says Hasbro/Kenner with a lot of their discussions here. So within that, they discuss, little things about how, the price point they want to have it, that it's going to be 22 cents per unit that McDonald's has to pay for the figures. A lot of interesting numbers here, too. And that they are planning it says here, I'm going to quote this: Hasbro's Transformers are a classic among boys. The new Hasbro 95 retail unveiled even more exciting Transformer designs in both vehicle and character form, still emphasizing that G2 thing. With the support of a new Transformers TV show, the Happy Meal meal should be even more popular. This is them suggesting that they're going to have some kind of show in 1996, aka what would be Beast Wars. They didn't know what it was going to be yet, but they knew something was there. Aged at kids 4 to 7, and at the time they said no restriction on designs of the untransformed state. Toys could be either figures, vehicles, animals, or insects, or McDonald's food packaging. Imagine, they were even suggesting to kind of look at the McChangeables that came a few years prior to that. If possible, Transformer toys should be leveraged for the 1995 retail line. So, again, using those characters, those concepts, there was still an emphasis on, we got to look at what was being done in G2. Interesting numbers here. The plan is that there's going to be 62 million of these per design sold across the United States and Canada, meaning looking back now, hindsight today, so it's mean like Manta Ray, Beetle, whatever, each one of those, there's 62 million of them out there. Pretty crazy when you think about it. Probably when you think about the best-selling Transformers of all time. Like any other McDonald's promotion. Again, timing, planned estimation for April of 96. And just the basic stuff. It's going to be in a poly bag, not have a coupon in it, yada, yada, yada. And then we get into the proposals, and this is where it gets really fascinating. So they said we have 3 proposals for you here, McDonald's. Although they do say here, I like here, which never panned out. For all the Transformer designs, we recommend the Transformers' heads be a vac metal material, glow-in-the-dark or tinted edge glow plastic that will be even more fun and play value for the toys. Of course, none of that ever panned out for the McDonald's toys initially. So they had 3, again, separate proposals. This is in March 7th, 1995. They have the fold-out Transformer proposal, which pretty much translates to traditional transformation. The Creature Auto Roller, which we'll get into and what that is, or the Vehicle Auto Roller, which is even more controversial when you think about it. So first we have the fold-out Transformer, and of course they explain what it is. Traditional fold-out, move pieces, fold them out, and then you have the robot mode. And the Predacons, which are the bad guys, have a crocodile that is with Megatron, a snapping turtle that is Buzzsaw, interesting, and a scorpion that transforms into Shockwave. And these designs will be very familiar with you. The good guys are the Cyber Beasts, or in this case, as it's called, the Cyber Bests, because in some cases, but it's Cyber Beasts as they in other places on this documentation. But the Cyber Beasts are a bat that turns into Optimus Prime, a panther that turns into Prowl, or a lion that turns into Optimus Prime. And then, of course, they go into the little details, how the fold-out works. Kids will get 2 toys in one. And they say that it's very familiar to a line of toys that McDonald's did just previously, the Food Fundamentals. For people who aren't familiar with that, in 1992, McDonald's did a promotion called Food Fundamentals, which were pretty much food that transformed into sentient people. Picture like a piece of steak that then had arms and legs and a face. Very funny stuff. So we see the Megatron, and obviously we have the sketches and stuff. The Megatron looks like the traditional Croc Megatron that we knew. And when you look at Buzzsaw, the snapping turtle looks very similar to that of Snapper that we would get, with Beast Wars Series 1 also. And even that of the Scorpion known as Scorponok that we know today, this was called Shockwave, and it looks a lot like what we know of the Scorponok from Beast Wars today. Same thing with the Optimus Prime that turns into a bat. And then we have Prowl that turns into what is supposed to be a panther, but it's pretty clear. That this was going to be probably in a lot of ways what Cheetor was going to be, and we'll get into that in a moment too. And then, of course, we have the only one that's really unique here, which is the lion that transforms also into an Optimus Prime kind of character. Very simplistic transformations, of course. The head becomes the chest and everything like that. Predates Lio Convoy by a couple of years. Predates Lio Jr., a.k.a. Prowl from Magnaboss, a couple of years. This was our first ever Lion Optimus Prime in a lot of ways. Now, the second proposal that they had here was the Creature Auto Roller, which was, well, instead of doing the fold-out gimmick, how about we do something where the figure rolls across the ground and it has wheels under it, and as it rolls across the ground, it auto-transforms up. Again, the auto roller gimmick was something that Hasbro had just recently created with G2, with 1994 and 1995, with their own auto roller concept. It's where the character of Roadblock exists and so on and so forth. So they also suggest the same thing, but this time it's like, hey, we'll have the Croc Megatron and the Snapping Turtle Buzzsaw, but when you roll them across, they auto-transform. And they show little drawings of how that'll work and stuff. And same thing, Optimus Prime with the Bat and the Prowl that turns into the Panther. Again, look at the details, because it's going to get into that later on. And then the final proposal was, if you don't like beasts at all, why don't we just do vehicle auto rollers? And this is where it gets interesting. So you have the Moon Buggy that transforms into Prowl, a jet that transforms into Starscream, a steam shovel that transforms into Hound, and a dump truck that transforms into Rumble. Again, using all those trademarks that have not been used and have to be swung around in different areas to kind of keep those trademarks fresh, even if it existed back then. And so be it. So we have an image of how the Prowl would have looked, the moon buggy, very interesting. And and then the last thing is, and of course, McDonald's always had their under 3 promotion, which is something for the preschoolers that doesn't have moving parts that could be chokeable. So they have their under 3 promotion. They suggest, while we normally recommend a PVC toy, this feature instead will be a head of Optimus Prime in an untransformed state that the kid could open up the head, and Optimus Prime's design will be in the middle. This would be very familiar looking to a lot of Beast Wars collectors, but it's a slow evolution of it. So it's just the head of G1 Optimus Prime. You crack it in half, and then there's a G1 Optimus Prime body etched onto the inside of the plastic. This would go through a very interesting evolving state throughout the periods of this. So that was the first ever major proposal in March. Now, let's just break down a little bit some of this. So you see right away that, first of all, the blaring thing is that they're calling Optimus Prime the Bat here. So in the early stages of this, it's still Optimus Prime. It's still G1 Megatron. That's how it was supposed to be. All of the logos and stuff is clearly still Transformers. It's G2 font and the style. This is still in the G2 kind of era. This could have all been just a continuation of G2 in a lot of ways. And you could see that, like, you know, hey, their Scorponok was clearly supposed to be a Shockwave in its original concept. The Snapper, originally called Buzzsaw, the Laserbeak repaint from G1. It's very interesting. And when you look at Prowl, which is what would be Panther years later in, of course, the McDonald's toy line, you also see the early designs of what was going to be Cheetor. Chances are, because when you look at Prowl's original G1 design and you look at Cheetor's head sculpt or that of even Panther's head sculpt, there's a lot of similarities there. When you look at the Cheetor mold, it was very clear that the original Cheetor mold was never intended to be a cheetah from the beginning. He had that of the fangs that were coming out of the side and the front, almost like a saber-toothed tiger. The mold matches that more of this Prowl here. Chances are these were all supposed to be the same character. This Panther character that was going to end up becoming a McDonald's toy was also going to be the same cat character in the first run of deluxes of the Beast Wars toy and that of the show. It was all going to be Prowl. That's why there's such a similarity in head sculpt and everything like that across it. Same thing when, you know, hindsight again, looking forward, there's the Rhino character and then there's Rhinox in the McDonald's toy line. But still fascinating. And then, of course, we then have the Lion, Optimus Prime, which nothing came of that one. So, proposal number 2 was a month later. This is dated here April 2nd, 1995. Obviously, there was some back and forth and discussion, and they decided to go with the beasts over the vehicles. And so they come back again. They're like, okay, you're going to go with the beasts instead of the vehicles. So imagine, through that discussion back and forth, there was the choice to go with beasts over vehicles. The evolution begins a year before. And now they go, okay, here we're going to propose 2 concepts then. We're going to propose, again, the fold-out concept, and we're going to propose the rolling transformation, auto-transformation concept. It says here, they give now a rollout, so we're going to have a manta ray named Optimus Prime, a turtle named Megatron, a dragonfly named Megatron if you want instead, a iguana named Igneous, which we also know where that went, and the Panther Prowl shows up again. They also recommend we'll try to keep the name simple, don't include the alt modes, just include the names of the characters and make it easy. And we also have another under 3 concept, which we'll get into. So we see a sea turtle Optimus Megatron here. Very fascinating, this sea turtle Megatron. Of course, we would get Snapper, the snapping turtle, years later, but we never would get any kind of form of a sea turtle Megatron, so very funny, this one. I really like it a lot. Makes me wonder if a third party could do it or something. Now, the most interesting of the bunch here to me, and it was what I was going nuts on Twitter, is as a kid, I used to always look at Manta Ray, and I was like, man, like, he was clearly meant to be Optimus Prime. I would always look at his head and go, that's clearly an Optimus Prime looking head. And I just, chalked it up to, hey, it just looks similar. That's all. And now years later, everything is confirmed that Manta Ray was originally supposed to be Optimus Prime. So if you have that old Manta Ray McDonald's toy, it was supposed to be Optimus Prime. It's very interesting that. And they have they show how the transformation works, head flip down, this and that, all the little things, turn robot head. They show all the little details, the paint rollout, all really cool stuff. Again, April of 1995, just a month after that first proposal. The Dragonfly Megatron, very interesting. This one, what's fascinating about it is it also has a very evolutionary connection, because when you look at Beetle, which is what actually did the actual run, that first run of the Beast Wars McDonald's toys, Manta Ray, Beetle, Panther, and Rhino. Beetle, if you look at his head sculpt, is Megatron. It's that Megatron head sculpt. It's not purple. It's like yellow with those paint decos. So I really feel that Dragonfly was probably the early prototypical evolution to what would be Beetle, just that in the end it wasn't Megatron. In this case it is here, but still fascinating. Of course, then we got Iguanus or Igneous or however you want to pronounce it, Iguanus in this case. This would, of course, later on lead to the basic toy from the 1996 Beast Wars toy line. But he was early proposal here in the McDonald's toy to be included too. And then, of course, we got Prowl. Obviously, slightly different colors here, more emphasis on the red in the robot, like red with whites and blacks. Very nice. I still dig it. Again, transformation. Looks really cool. So those four would have been the initial planned figures anyhow. And then you have, if you don't like those, we also have the same figures, but if they were auto rollers. So, Prowl rolls across, transforms everything. And then the most fascinating of all is at the end. Oh, by the way, that under 3 Optimus Prime G1 head that opens up and has Optimus Prime G1's body in it. Well, we've changed that because now you like the beast idea. So now it's a lion head that opens up and G1 Optimus Prime is on the inside. Of this whole proposal, pretty much the Manta Ray, the Prowl, obviously with slightly different colors, and this Optimus Prime lion head survived that process, because when you pick up under 3 today, the original under 3 1996 Beast Wars McDonald's toy, and you open it up, it's still a very G1 Optimus Prime looking robot mode on the inside there. So it's super interesting, all this stuff. It really is. And to me, what blows my mind is I look at Benson Yee's message boards, one of the very first message boards for Transformers, if not the first message board of Transformers, and ATT posts, Alt Toys Transformer posts from that era. The good thing is both of these things, I've kept documentations of these for years. ATT posts you could still find on Google Groups and dive deep into the archive. But I was able to kind of document like when this stuff was cited, when Beast Wars toys were first showing up and stuff like that. And you could kind of really create a timeline. One of the very first posts about the McDonald's toys showing up was Raksha, the very famous Raksha in the Transformer fandom, who's not really doing anything with the fandom anymore. She was one of the first to go. In March 8th of 1996, she heard from the grapevine, probably a friend of hers at McDonald's, that the toys were going to be showing up the following month, just as predicted in this proposal here. The proposal said April of 1996, and she was doing this post in March of 1996, saying they will be starting to show up. And everything kind of fell into place very quickly. Of course, the very first Beast Wars toy sightings ever were, I think it was January of 1996. That's when Beast Wars toys started hitting retail, and the very first deluxes and basics, the Blue Eye Cheetors, the Rocky Bubble, all of that started showing up in January of 1996. The very first sighting ever by the fandom was January 5th, 1996, by a guy named G.I. Trekker. He found it in his Target for $9.99 a piece for the deluxes. Imagine history itself. But this is so complex and fascinating to me, because it almost seems like it shows that the back and forth proposals a year before Beast Wars was in its final form kind of steered an emphasis more on the animals over the vehicles, because proposal number 3 had vehicles, and a month later McDonald's came back with MB sales and said, no, we're going to go with the beasts. And then we see like, oh, there's the Manta Ray Prime, just a Prime at the time, the Manta Ray Prime, the Dragonfly Megatron, and it shows that it's just the early growing pains of what would have been all this stuff. And people need to understand that, especially back in the day, McDonald's food promotions were a big deal, a very big deal, because as I mentioned just at the beginning of all of this, like if you want to talk about the best-selling toys of all time, 6 million Beast Wars toys or 6 million Transformer toys in every single Happy Meal, you know, you can't get that better spread than anything else. You're going to be in every kid's toy box. So McDonald's was a huge critical part of Beast Wars' I guess, spread in the early years, because Hasbro planned it that, oh, hey, McDonald's, we're going to do this promotion. We're going to have a show. Obviously, probably at the time, they didn't know how they were going to do the show, but they were going to do a show, whether it be 2D or 3D. And this is going to be our next evolution of the brand. And I said at the beginning, it was also the first time Transformers had any kind of fast food promotion with McDonald's. Prior to that, they did have, but it was a test market, limited run, G1 thing, didn't really transform. So this was the first legitimate, widespread, nationwide Transformers fast food promotion through the McDonald's brand, and it was a big deal. And they were kind of working with them, and through that, it led to what would be Beast Wars, which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy. And then, of course, you know, more evolution came. They went with the Bat and the Croc Megatron, the Bat Primal. They called it Optimus Primal. You know, what would be known as Prowl, the Black Panther, would evolve into then instead the Cheetor character. But the growing pains of those early McDonald's developments stayed with the McDonald's toys. That's why even though we had all of those Beast Wars characters in that first wave of toys, the McDonald's toys didn't match anything that was the show. And that might have been confusing to a lot of people, but at the same time, now we understand that. That Manta Ray that we're looking at was an early growing pain of what would have been Optimus Prime. That Beetle that we're looking at is an early growing pain of what would have been a Megatron. That Panther was supposed to be Cheetor. Cheetor was supposed to be a Panther. Even if you look at Cheetor's mold, again, he ain't no cheetah. And same thing, the Rhino, what we would have been as Rhinox today. So it's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. And it makes me now look at my Manta Ray figure, which has since then been retconned as a Predacon and a female character, or Beetle. This is Optimus Prime and Megatron. You know, that Panther was originally supposed to be Prowl. And Rhino is the only one that's kind of, we still don't have the whole backstory. There's probably yet more proposals and more documentation to be found. Maybe, you know, that final decision of what would be that first wave. But this really is such a time capsule of what was going on then, and really gives us a strong idea of the direction and how the brand went to where it is today. Again, not being called Maximals, the Cyber Beasts instead. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. I spent all of last night just digging through old ATT posts and old papers that I've printed out, just trying to like pinpoint, you know, when certain things happened, when certain things came out, just to make sure all the numbers were accurate. Even with BotCon, you know, with BotCon and the reports from BotCon and who was there and what was there. No Beast Wars was shown at BotCon. No one knew Beast Wars was coming at BotCon 95. So great stuff. Absolutely. I am like still shocked by what we have here. You know, it's great stuff. And I mean, I just love just going through it all, because like looking through our old posts and, you know, we all know Ben Yee. Some people know him as Benson Yee, but all the way back then it was Benson Gregory Yee, as he would post on All Toys Transformers. Oh man, this takes me back. It's great stuff, but at the same time, it just blows my mind that we still are finding little pieces of the secret origins of Beast Wars. And I mean, it's always been, in my opinion, the best Transformer series ever made, and it saved the brand. But when you're seeing how it saved the brand and how it was built, and how McDonald's probably had an integral part in the choice of that beast kind of twist to it, and how it made things different, that's crazy. That's crazy. So next time you see Manta Ray for, 50 cents or whatever at a convention, pick him up, transform him, give him a hard stare, and go, how you doing, Optimus Prime? We got a huge future ahead of us. So this is crazy stuff. I'm going to link in the description below and in the comments the whole proposal. I think of all the websites that have reported this news since last night, probably T-Formers had the best translation of everything. Not everything that I discussed here is in that, but most of it is there, so they probably have the best of all the scans and stuff. Again, big shout out to the guy who pretty much got all this stuff. Robotic Planet Toys, who got their hands on this concept binder. Man, this is just some mind-blowing stuff. So let me know what you think, guys. I love this stuff. I eat this stuff up. This is incredible.